I'd like to call the Board of Public Works meeting of March 23rd, 2016 to order and ask if anyone else besides LCAT is recording the meeting. Hearing none, we will move on to the first item, which would be to review and approve the minutes of the meeting of March 8th.
So moved. I'd like to second the motion.
Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The first item on the agenda would be the preliminary review of department rates, water, and sewer. And that would be anticipation of a hearing, correct?
That is correct, yeah. We have tentatively scheduled a hearing for April 20th.
Okay.
What I did in the package I put together for the board's benefit is I didn't provide all the rate information at this time. I really focused on water and sewer rates and where I expect we might be recommending some changes to those rates. The remainder of the package will be put together for the hearing. Some of this information looks familiar because it's similar in format to what I've presented in previous years and similar in format to what I had sent out as a draft. I did have a chance to discuss some of this with Mr. Burak earlier today, and I made a couple of tweaks based on input from Mr. Burak, but I'll talk you through it. Format is fairly straightforward, similar to past years. The first thing I do is I project expenses for the current fiscal year, proposed expenses for fiscal 17, and then for rate setting purposes, what I anticipate expenses might be going forward 5 years.
Great.
So that's the first spreadsheet. The second spreadsheet, I'm giving you a little bit more detail than what I've done in previous years, and what I'm showing you is the actual debt service schedule that's being carried by the Sewer Enterprise Fund right now. And the information from this debt service schedule is what I utilized in the previous chart that you saw. So when you see the principal and interest line, that's extracted from this sheet that's provided to me by the town clerk.
Okay.
The third sheet, relative to the Sewer Enterprise Fund, is an estimation that I need to make every year of where we will start the new fiscal year with from a cash balance standpoint. Since this fiscal year hasn't been closed out yet, we won't know exactly what our cash balance looks like. But what I do take is I start with the expenses for fiscal 16. Those are known, the budget for fiscal 16. I start with the starting balance, which is the audited starting balance of the Sewer Enterprise Fund for fiscal 16 at the beginning of this year. And then I add up the expenses and the revenue that are estimates. This year I would expect that those estimates are probably conservative because we had a pretty strong year from a water billing standpoint, and that boosts the sewer billing up as well. But it's really, I'm not attempting to estimate how much that billing is up. So what I'm using is the standard projections in terms of what we typically provide on average for water and sewer service. That then provides an ending balance. What I did on the sewer budget, and I did to a greater extent on the water budget, is based on the true-ups that we received from the city of Springfield. We expect to finish at least one of our line items under budget. And what I've indicated is that underrun in the budget stays in the bank essentially and is therefore part of the starting balance for this upcoming year.
Good.
So then I get into my rate estimation sheet where I present, again, the starting balance that I've developed on the preceding sheet, the expenses that are projected for fiscal 17 based on actually, I believe our budget's been approved by the Appropriations Committee at this point, a rate assumption, again, a usage assumption, and then a projection of what our ending balance would be in the enterprise fund at the end of the year. What I do want to note is that the projected ending balance does not include the vehicle replacement fund. So if that number that you see at the bottom, or the second to last line at the bottom, is exclusive of the vehicle replacement fund, so it's not subtracted from that line item. And that fund, as we've talked about before, builds through the years until such time as we need to expend some of that fund for the purchase of replacing water or sewer vehicles. You know, what I presented, the other thing I did want to note in my expense projections, as Mr. Mayberry knows, we're still, and the board knows as well, we're still in discussions with Springfield Water and Sewer Commission regarding how some costs might be allocated in future years. I've taken a fairly conservative approach in terms of what they've put in front of us at this time, if we're successful with some of our discussions with Springfield, some of these future costs, particularly as we get out to 2019 and 2020, may go down. And if they do go down, then some of the projected expenses will go down, and some of the rate impact will obviously decrease as well. So I think from a sewer standpoint, what I've presented here is I think we're in a pretty good shape right now. I think we're in a year where we might be able to be flat with rates this year for sewer rates, and still maintain a reasonable balance in the enterprise fund account, basically, to protect us in the event of there being unforeseen issues that might come up.
Looks good. So basically flat, and then 10 cents, 20 cents, 25,
Right.
30 cents, based
Right.
on what we feel might happen in the future.
Right. And as I said, if we're successful with our discussions with Springfield, some of those future greater increases may actually reduce somewhat. So I think, I think we're in pretty good shape. One of the reasons there is we're not carrying anywhere nearly as much debt service on the sewer budget as we do on the water budget. Water, we're carrying a lot of capital improvements there.
And we're not really foreseeing a real lot of sewer expenses in our face, right?
We're doing sewer rehab, and we've
Right.
allocated within the budget $100,000 per year for investigation and rehab work.
But nothing like a water tank or...
Nothing
On the sewer
major
side
that
of
we
things,
anticipate at this point. We're,
Pump station's in good shape.
yeah, we're spending. Vineland Pumping Station, our biggest station, is relatively new. We rehabbed Watchog several years ago. Denslow's been rehabbed. Those are our biggest,
Right.
3 stations. And the other ones, we invest money in every year, replacing pumps and electronics and things like that as part of our operating budget. So I don't anticipate any major expenses other than rehab. And, we may find, if we find that we have some significant projects that come out of our investigative phase, we may present something in the future, but there's nothing that I know of at the moment.
Awesome. Good.
Looking at the water budget, the same scenario applies. I take a look at current year, projected 17, and then projected years going out. What I will say on the expenses for 17 through 21, these projected expenses, particularly relative to the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission billing, is probably a little bit more solid than on the sewer side, because we know how those costs are going to be assessed. We know what those costs are, so some of the numbers may not be quite as high as Springfield has estimated at this point, or they may not occur exactly when Springfield has estimated they would occur, but we do know that they will occur, and we do know what our relative share of those are going to be. So, 19, 20, 21, those numbers are probably going to be in the magnitude that we see here. Similar to sewer, I started with the current debt service. And you see that on the next sheet. That is the information you see in black that's provided to me via the town clerk and our bond advisor. A couple of things I want to call out. One is the Harkness Pumping Station, which was completed close to 3 years ago, 2.5 to 3 years ago, that it was funded. That still has not been rolled into long-term financing. It will be rolled into long-term financing this year. So we've been paying debt service on what are known as bond anticipation notes, BANs, but that's going to be rolled into long-term financing. This is a fairly conservative finance schedule that the town clerk has provided to me at a fairly high interest rate, actually at about a 4% interest rate. So I'm pretty certain we're going to be seeing interest rates lower than that. But what I've done is I've added in that principal interest, which I know will be hitting us perhaps not quite as high as we see here. And then I've looked forward to our capital improvement plan out through fiscal 17, particularly through 20. Each one of those years we're at this point presenting pipeline improvement projects that are in the order of $500,000 to $750,000 per year. And the thought is that it would be difficult for the water budget to fund a straight capital amount per year of that magnitude, particularly when we're seeing some significant increases with Springfield. So that during those years that we're seeing the Springfield increases, there's likely an advantage to flattening out some of our costs by looking at financing those $500,000, $750,000 projects. Right now in the pipeline, we only have one project we've identified in fiscal 29. That's a $150,000 project. So right now, and that's a long way away, I've anticipated that that would be funded all through capital in the current year. So if you flip back to the previous page, what you'll see is that for annual capital project allocation from 17 through 20, I have not shown a amount for capital allocation because those numbers would be financed and it would be carried through principal and interest as opposed to a capital line item cost. The money is there, it just shows up in a different line. So everything you see that's presented in red are anticipated future costs that right now I'm saying, we would likely look at financing. And if we do, that's what our financing costs would look like projected out for the next 10 plus years.
So what's the value of the project in 17?
In 17, we have the Maple Shade water main replacement from North Main Street to Maple Shade. Bear with me for a second. That piece by itself is $480,000 estimated, and then we have $74,000 in there for the Fern Glen piece of water main. So combined, I was looking at financing $550,000 and change is what's been projected out through here.
Okay. And that's what you're coming up with for?
That's correct.
The P&I for that period?
That's correct.
Of 17?
Right.
Okay.
And I think my assumptions were I took each one of these.
And the same thing as 18, same
Correct.
thing as 19?
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing as- Okay,
Yeah. For instance,
awesome.
in fiscal 19, our CIP shows $554,000. Fiscal 18, it shows $790,000 total. Fiscal 19 shows $887,500.
Got it.
And again, what I did was I put them into the formula for, 10-year fixed principal. Actually, yeah, with, I believe I carried a 3.5% interest rate.
And then showed them on the bottom line?
And showed them in the principal and interest line.
Got it.
So now that we're running our own fund, we essentially have to do the same type of planning that the town has to do relative to looking at free cash and what our bank account value might be
Got
looking
it.
forward. So that's what's a little bit different on the water fund because we're carrying more principal and interest and we anticipate some projects in the next 4 to 5 years. The projection of what our bank account looks like at the beginning of fiscal 17, the process is the same. What I did do is I made a more significant adjustment based on the significant true-up that we saw at the beginning of this fiscal year to get to a starting balance at the beginning of fiscal 17. Using that starting balance, we're currently at $2.95 per 100 cubic feet. I went through a couple of different scenarios. One scenario showed no change. It was doable, but what it meant was that we were having to look at some much more significant increases in the future. And the thought would be perhaps we look at a modest increase this year to reduce some of the increases that might have to happen in the future.
I'm about to look up how many gallons in 100 cubic feet.
748.
Thank you. I was about to look that up, but I figured you might just...
Yeah, that one.
748.
748, yep.
748 divided by... It's a trivia question that I get asked every once in a
Right.
while.
How much is this?
So do you already know that?
I don't.
748 divided by 295, right? No, let's see, what am I doing? No.
If you're trying to do the...
295 divided by 748. Gallon, cost per gallon.
I haven't done that math yet this year.
2.95
That's 100
divided
cubic
by...
feet. Oh, is that?
100 cubic feet,
That's
correct.
100 cubic feet.
Divided by
Which is 748 gallons.
Yeah.
0.003.
Right.
So that would be 4/10 of a penny
Per gallon. Correct.
is what we charge our residents.
You pay a lot for the plastic bottle when you
It's
buy
one of the
water.
cheapest commodities you can
So
have.
I just want to have it.
Delivered to your house.
0.039 per gallon.
Try living without it.
And if we jack it up to a whole $3.05, right? Divided by 748. Uh-oh, it's gonna go to 0.0040 cents per gallon.
So the delta is .000.
Kind of puts things in perspective when you start saying my water bill's a lot, but it's less than a half a penny a gallon for good East Long Meadow water, so. All right,
So this is a scenario that you may want to think about. If there's anything you'd like me to change, other scenarios, just let me know. I can run them very quickly. So then,
because we have a water enterprise fund, we could start selling bottled water.
in theory, we could start selling bottled water.
We got a bottle manufacturer on Industrial Drive. Our freight to get the bottles would probably be pretty good.
The interesting thing is the bottled water industry is less regulated than the public water industry.
No.
So there's less testing, less oversight.
On some nice location, we could have a bottle stand and cover some costs. It's an interesting
Sell
thought.
at the
isn't it?
transfer station.
Sell it at the dome.
It's kind of an interesting thought when you look at the cost.
Mm.
I'm sure there's much more to it. Okay, so are we comfortable with
Yeah.
flat on sewer, up a dime on water?
So again, if, we have several weeks between now and the hearing where we make this official, so
Yep,
Right.
I can look at any number of other scenarios.
I like it.
Okay, so the next items I put in here, in the interest of trying to keep things fairly short, is really just the items that I thought might be worth looking at modifying at the transfer station. The thought is, we've increased the transfer station sticker fee 2 years in a row, $5 a year, from $40 to $50, which, interesting, I went back, it had been $40 per year back in 2004, so it had been there for a long time. My thought is, if there are items that are either costing us more money than we're charging, or items that are really affecting just a small set of the users of the transfer station, we're really in this business primarily as a service to the residents, and try to reduce the impact of the residents to the extent that we can, but where there's a cost that affects a subset that uses the transfer station differently than others, perhaps, that's the area that we should focus on costs. So the first thing I looked at was electronics costs, and we are seeing cost increases there. And for point of reference, we have not increased our electronics costs since 2008. And what I did for discussion purposes is look at taking those fees up $5 per unit across the board. Not really a lot of science to it, other than the numbers have stayed flat for a long time. And it's something that some of our residents use, but by no means do all of the residents use.
Isn't there a program where
They'll come again.
they come and get them, they have a pickup, and is that something that maybe we could
You could look into, sure.
look into and have it at the pier or something like that? I know we have on the three-town basis, we have the one for the hazardous material,
Right.
and it floats from Hampton, East Long Meadow, and Wilbraham, I think. But I'm just wondering, people with all these computers, people are upgrading stuff and having old stuff.
It depends on quantity,
Kelly right there.
because I actually do that.
We do have an e-cycling program that comes to the high school every single year. And
Okay.
you can bring your televisions, your VCRs, your DVD players, your computers, everything. You pay a small fine, and they take them.
Okay. So, take a look at that.
I wasn't aware of that. but-
That may be a way to reduce our cost as well as reduce the cost of the residents as well.
Mhm.
So I'll do some work on that between now and the 20th, so we can have a better answer there.
Okay,
And find out if the school is gonna have one.
Right.
I mean, just so we can help the townspeople know, because I didn't know.
The other items, just for interest, I was able to pull up, because Mr. Gramaski saved everything in electronic form, pull up a copy of what the rules and regulations were for the transfer station in 2004, and I highlighted the fees that were presented at that time, and as I said, it was $40 for the transfer station sticker, $10 per car load for bulky material, $25 per pickup load for bulky material, $25 for landscapers on pickup trucks, and $35 for dump trucks. So I highlighted those items for a reason, because then when you look at the next sheet, the items that I think we may want to think about. And actually, the bulky items, the cost to dispose of a sofa or something like that is a bit confusing right now, the way that we have the rate structure set up, because we charge $10 per item, and then we charge $10 for a carload. So we get into some discussion sometimes if a person has 2 sofas stuffed in the back of a car, do they pay $10 or do they pay $20? My thought in looking at this is it makes a lot of sense to keep the per unit cost that we have. But if you're bringing a carload of bulky items that are big items, because those are what we're talking about here, not just a carload of trash material that goes in the dumpster, but a carload of bulky items or a truckload of bulky items, you should be paying more for a carload than you pay for a single item. So my suggestion at this point was we look at potentially upping the cost per car and upping the cost per truck, but keeping the per unit cost the same.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
That works.
The other item I highlighted was our mattress fee. At this point, the $10 per mattress that we charge comes close to covering our cost, but doesn't quite cover it, so we actually lose money on every mattress that comes in. It's a fine line, where we don't want them to show up on the side of the road, so we want to charge enough to cover our cost and incentivize people to bring them to us so they don't get left somewhere else. So my primary goal there is to get the cost up to really what our cost is, and not to be losing money on it.
Looks good.
And then the last item I had were the landscaper charges. I don't believe we get a lot of landscapers. The way it works is if somebody is hauling, as I understand it, yard waste for a resident, and the resident has a sticker, they can come in, as the resident. But if you're a landscaper running a business and you're bringing material in from anywhere, you have the ability to dump at our transfer station. You're getting a pretty cheap deal the way it is right now, and those fees have stayed the same since 2004. Again, probably not our target client really at the transfer station, so again, trying to focus on a subset of the people. So we're not impacting the residents in general, but impacting a group of people where our costs are probably higher than the revenue we're bringing in right now.
Okay. Good with it? Good. Nice done. Nicely done.
Thank you. So that's rates. As I said, I don't anticipate, I looked through all the other rate schedules, and we've made some increases in previous years and felt it was probably a good year to try to hold to the current rates if we could, and look again next year. So I guess with that, I'll try to move through other updates. One other item I did want to talk about, and I gave the board a couple of pieces of paper relative to our discussions with the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. When Mr. Mayberry and I had met with the commission several weeks ago, one of the things that we requested was a copy of what's known as the long-term control plan, basically their game plan for what they're doing with their combined sewer overflows. Because the city of Springfield is incurring, tremendous costs to separate sewers, to eliminate the overflows to the Connecticut River. We are not expected to share in those costs, so the Water and Sewer Commission goes through a process where they separate out the combined sewer-related costs and the non-combined sewer-related costs. And it was tricky to really understand where everything was. So by having the benefit of getting a copy of actually 2 documents that were about 2,000 pages altogether, that some quick scanning through, I now better understand what their game plan is. The 2 items that they are looking at having to make some significant capital investments in are what's known as the main intercepting sewer, which is the main pipeline that our wastewater flows through, Wilbraham's wastewater flows through, Ludlow's, Solucia's, etc. The big question I had was, are the improvements they're making downstream of where we are? If they're downstream, we can talk about what the percentage share should be, but I would think that we'd all agree that we should be sharing in those costs in some manner. And based on being able to review those documents, I do believe that all of the improvements they're proposing to make are downstream of our connection points, so they're a direct benefit to us. That's $25 million out of the $75 million that they have indicated they have for capital projects coming up in the next half dozen years.
So basically 1/3.
About 1/3, and our, well, not our, the non-CSO cost would be 70% of that. So they start with the total cost, they take 30% of that off and say that's related to combined sewer overflows, because by doing rehab and things like that, less flow ends up going into the river, and there's CSO-related benefits. Can understand that. The other real big item is the Connecticut River crossing. And I gave you a copy of the layout of the city of Springfield and the layout of the major infrastructure that goes through the city of Springfield on the following sheet. Couple of things that are worth pointing out on this picture. Everything you see in purple are separate sewers in Springfield. Everything you see in green are combined sewers. And what happens when you have a combined sewer, when it rains, all the stormwater mixes with the sanitary sewage, and everything goes into the pipe, as opposed to some newer systems where you separate the systems and your sewage goes to the treatment plant and your stormwater gets dealt with separately. So that's what this map shows. It shows the main pipeline that goes all the way up to Ludlow that carries most of the flow. There are two crossing points currently on the Connecticut River that are shown in magenta. The one to the south, one on the bottom, is the crossing point that we use the vast majority of the time. It's the big pipeline that was constructed in the 1970s. The crossing to the north is one that was put in the 30s or 40s that predates the formation of the commission, and is the pipeline that the city of Springfield used to use entirely to get their flow across the river to the original treatment facility. Roughly, as you look at this map, about 1/3 of Springfield goes to that pipeline. If you look at the black lines, kind of that network that you see there, kind of the left-hand side of that network goes to the Connecticut River, flows down what's known as the Connecticut River Interceptor, and eventually goes through that first pipe. That first pipe needs to be replaced. It's old, it's cast iron, they're seeing a significant amount of loss of material in the pipeline, and it's too small. So in order for Springfield to be able to send more flow to the treatment plant to get treated, as opposed to sending flow to the river during high flow periods, that pipeline and pump station need to get expanded. That's an estimated $50 million plus project.
And that has nothing to do with us.
There are some secondary benefits. The primary benefit is, certainly in my mind, combined sewer overflow elimination. And if you look at the other handout I gave you, which was a handout that the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission put together themselves from a public meeting in 2012. It describes in general what they're doing for CSO elimination. If you look at the second page in that, the right-hand side, I think it's mistitled. It says benefits from previous projects, but they're actually talking about future projects. So I think there was a typo, unfortunately, in there. But they're listing the half dozen projects that they're planning to do over the next 20 or so years, with a total value of about $136 million. And the goal of their overall combined sewer overflow eliminate, because you don't have to eliminate everything, you have to hit a certain target, is to reduce 87% of the overflows. The second line here, the York Street Pump Station and River Crossing, which is the project I'm talking about here, that northerly pipe, that accounts for 54% of the reduction. So by far, most of the reduction that they're getting is coming out of that one project. In discussions with Springfield at this point, they have indicated that they are expecting the non-CSO contributors, which includes Springfield as well. The way it works is they take a percentage off, and then Springfield pays, Solutia pays, East Longmeadow pays, Wilbraham pays, Ludlow pays, Friendly's pays. Right now, they're indicating that they believe that share should be 70%. There is a benefit that the town receives. The benefit that everybody connected to this main pipe receives is that pipe, there is interconnectivity between the main interceptor sewer and the northerly pipeline that was built when the when the main interceptor sewer was built. That interconnectivity triggers, from what I could read in the reports, around 120 million gallons per day. A lot of flow going in. The treatment plant is designed for an average day, I think, of 30 million gallons per day. So you're under peak conditions when your combined sewers are really coming into play. And during some of those conditions, some amount of the flow, everybody's flow that at that point is all mixed up, may overflow to that pipe and maybe goes across the river in that second pipe. The primary benefit is that there is some partial redundancy. If they put in a new pipeline, and I believe right now they're proposing a capacity of that pipeline of about 60 million gallons per day versus the 150 million or so that exists in the newer of the existing crossings. You could take that newer crossing offline to clean it, to maintain it, and during non-wet weather conditions, put 100% of the flow across the river if needed. So redundancy is a good thing.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I wouldn't dispute that there's a value to it. It's just coming at what the fair value is for that redundancy. There's a benefit. And at this point, I put a letter together really calling attention to this and really asking Springfield some direct questions about, is there a cost to the redundancy? If there is, 100% of that cost should be borne by the communities that benefit from the redundancy. If you're building something anyway and we benefited from it on a secondary basis, should we pay something? We should pay something. But I don't believe the amount that they're looking for at this point. So I have reached out to Wilbraham and Ludlow. We're all basically on hold at this point, waiting to see what we hear back from Springfield. It's a long story.
It's a good story, we're working on it. You got some other support from
Yeah.
a few people now.
It's, the key here was really to be able to get my head into the information, because without having the opportunity to read through the reports, I could only take away what I was being told.
Right.
And then I can share everything with you.
A couple of other items I did want to mention. Appropriations Committee, as I mentioned previously, I believe our annual budget has been approved by the Appropriations Committee. I did meet with Jim Broderick earlier this week to take a look again at the supplemental budget that we've proposed for the Phase 2 stormwater compliance. It's already been cut by about 1/3 because the effective date of that permit has been pushed back further, and there still is no hard date yet. So if it continues to get pushed back further and further, I expect those costs could continue to decrease. Sounds like appropriation is looking to try to shave that a little bit more. We'll see. You can only see where they end up. I'm certain they'll approve some portion of it, but I'm not certain they'll approve the whole request. Elman Maple Shade traffic lights. Happy to report that we did get the lights back fully functioning at this point. The only thing that we gave up is on one of the approaches, we gave up one of the signals that was there previously, where you had actually two lights on the cables and one on the ground. We now have one on the cable and one on the ground or one on the pole, which certainly meets requirements. We were able to salvage most of the existing equipment, and we worked with Northrop Electric originally on the emergency response, and then Daigle Electric, who did the original install, to reconfigure, repurpose everything that we could take off the ground and put back together again. And at this point, we had originally estimated we could be spending $40,000 to $50,000 to get that signal back in operation. Right now, I'm estimating that to be about $27,000, including everything, including the emergency response by Northrop, the work by Daigle, the traffic control costs, the small amount of new equipment that we had to purchase to get the lights back in service.
Excellent.
And no idea
With no
how to
recovery.
claim it.
No response yet at this point. We did reach out. We have not received a response back from the private property owner, and we'll see. We're not going to give up on that, but have no idea how that will turn out.
Okay.
One item I did want to mention, and this may be an item you might choose to act on tonight or act on if I put it on as a agenda item at the next meeting, is, as you may know, Frank Mirandi, until he retired in October, served as the town's tree warden. Since that time, we have been essentially filling that responsibility as a department. We had no one single individual that had the title of tree warden. At this point, it's my recommendation, and I've talked to Roy Esposito about this, that Roy be appointed as tree warden. Again, formal decision we could put onto the agenda at the next meeting for a formal vote. I think there's some real benefits to that. One, Roy has a lot of experience. He's been working with the department for many years. He's a lot of knowledge of the town. I think it really helps to increase our efficiency, because one of the things the tree warden has to do is to be able to go out there, not only take a look at the tree, but then decide, what do we do with it? What can we do with our own forces? What can't we do with our own forces? What's a priority? Because unfortunately, there's always more need than we have funds to be able to accomplish that need. So, those operational role, Roy as highway and utilities manager is an ideal position to be able to say, okay, I'm going to look at the tree. We can do this ourselves. It's not going to be a big cost item, and no, we can't do it ourselves, because, so we then have to put it on a list and decide, how do we allocate the limited amount of funding we have to get done the highest priority items during the year. So, again, that would be my recommendation. Procedurally, you may want me to put this on as an agenda item and act on it at the next meeting.
Is the tree warden also the one that communicates with the utility companies about trimming trees, or is that
Yeah.
something?
Roy and I have talked about that, and the thought is, with all the responsibilities that Roy has, he either himself or someone in the department will do the initial assessment. If it's a tree that has wires going through it, because our typical, two things we determine first: is it our tree, is it a privately owned tree, or is it a publicly owned tree? Then if it's a publicly owned tree, we take a look at, is it something that we can get somebody else to take care of? So that initial assessment says, okay, we own it, and there's three-phase power running through the middle of it. Then we go ahead and we call National Grid at that point and see if they'll come out and take care of it. Most of the times they will. Once that determination is made, then Roy will hand it back to the office. The office will then do the coordination with National Grid to keep that moving. If we're going to be doing it ourselves, though, then Roy will make certain work orders created, and we get the work taken care of ourselves.
Yeah, put it on the next one.
Okay.
Next meeting?
Then two other items I did want to mention, and probably not get into too much detail, but just mention a couple of coordination items that have come up lately with the interim town administrator. I was surprised, as probably the other board members were, to see an article online today in the Springfield Republican regarding an application that was made to the Mass Gaming Commission for monies to conduct a traffic study of the Rotary in town. It was the first I'd seen of the application. I had heard that the application may have been submitted initially based on what I understand was that Mr. Neffinger, our interim town administrator, had met with the Board of Selectmen, had represented to the Board of Selectmen that town departments were in favor of this application. No town departments were consulted. We were not consulted. I did meet with Mr. Neffinger after the Board of Selectmen discussion, let him know that I wasn't certain that we'd feel that this was a great expenditure of the limited funds, because this is really a one-time pool of funding that the town has available to it to draw down to mitigate potentially impacts of the casino. And it doesn't need to be drawn down this year, it could be drawn down next year. We had a lengthy discussion, and we ultimately left it with that the application may or may not go in. And if it went in, it was going to be kept broad enough that maybe the funding could be applied to other projects around the town. And as I said, I saw the application for the first time this morning, and when I saw it, it was written specifically to do a traffic study of improving pedestrian access and traffic issues at the Rotary. And it may be a valid project, but it may not be the most important projects and the highest priorities for the town to do town-wide. So just wanted to make the board aware of that.
How many studies are we gonna do? We've done them all, and, the end result is that it's too costly, and requires a lot of land taking, and nobody's willing to super forward with
So
that.
does he specifically have the authority to submit this?
I don't believe he has the authority to make decisions relative to the town roads. The Mass General Law that the town adopted by town meeting many years ago gives the Board of Public Works a number of responsibilities. You serve as water commissioners, you serve as sewer commissioners, you serve as park commissioners, you serve as cemetery commissioners if we had cemeteries, and road commissioners. I would say that the responsibility for making decisions regarding the town's roads rests with the Board of Public Works. The Board of Selectmen is the agency that negotiated with the casino developer and with the Mass Gaming Commission, so I think everything flows through the Board of Selectmen. But again, the decision that would impact a specific elected board, I would think originates at that elected board.
Isn't there a town mitigation committee that was involved with it at the beginning, and
Right.
I mean, wouldn't they? I mean, somebody's gotta decide
Right.
what the problem is. I
Right.
mean, it's just, should be some discussion, some committee formed or something to decide. And I think it's too premature. We have no idea, hasn't it? They're still doing the demolition down there in downtown Springfield, so we don't know what impact we're gonna have.
Now, it's a very good point. There was a committee formed. Most of the work was done prior to my arrival in town, because that's when studies were done and investments were, or negotiations took place, and there was a commitment, financial commitment made by the casino developer to the town, as they did make to several other towns. That committee probably met for the last time about 2 years ago. I did attend 1 or 2 of those committee meetings, and there were representatives from the Board of Selectmen's office. Angela Thorpe chaired the committee at that point. My understanding was that sometime after that, the chairman of the board at that time, Paul Federici, was appointed as the chairman of that committee, but the committee did not meet since that time. There were representatives from the school department, the fire department, the police department, planning department, anybody, council on aging, anybody that might be potentially impacted by the casino development that might have a need. And, you know, I might believe that the repaving Shaker Road is the greatest need, but I don't get to make that decision entirely by myself. So that was the reason for putting this interdepartment committee together, to ultimately put the best solution forward for the town. And no, that committee wasn't brought back together again. I did suggest it, the suggestion wasn't followed up on.
I don't see making another study of the Rotary, no matter who's paying for it, is gonna change the facts. I mean, if you're gonna change it, you need to take a land taking, and that's gonna be way too costly.
Plus the construction. They talked about overpasses, they talked about blocking off streets. And
Yeah, so what are our options? I write a letter, obviously, so we're gonna write a letter from the chairman.
Certainly.
I believe, unless you guys disagree.
No?
I'll entertain any kind of motion you guys might have, or just further discussion, but I think we've got to involve town council, and we've got to involve, I mean, if we're supposed to be in charge of the streets and the Rotary, and other people should be involved, we've got to figure out how to undo this one as well, along with other things that we're aware of that are happening.
Yeah, I think it's very premature to even be spending any of this money until we really see how we're impacted, and it should be open to all departments and not just, you know, DPW.
And the real point to be made on the money is it's a one-time opportunity there.
Yeah.
The communities, impacted communities, were generally allocated $100,000 for post sort of negotiation impacts. The money is the town's. The town has to apply for the money, but the money isn't going to be given to somebody else. But there's only $100,000. The only way that the town would ever get any more money out of a gaming deal at this point would be if it went to the Gaming Commission and made this overwhelming case that there were impacts that nobody envisioned when the negotiations occurred, that the town's now experiencing, and getting the state legislature and the Gaming Commission to fund using state money to mitigate those impacts.
Right.
But there's nothing else coming from the casino, there's nothing else coming from the Gaming Commission other than these monies that have been set aside.
I guess the letter needs to include whatever we can. I'll work together with you
Sure.
to get a letter out to him, but I would think what drove the decision for the Rotary as opposed to the Dwight Road intersection, or the Harkness intersection, or the Maple Shade and Elm intersection, or the
Right.
Pease Road. There was just another accident just now, Pease Road and Shaker Road. You know, where are the people going to be coming from and going to and from?
Right.
I really would need some support information to even think that this was a reasonable thing to do at the time.
I agree.
So I'm not putting you guys on the spot.
No, not at all. I don't see.
So we gotta get a letter off to the Board of
Sure.
Selectmen addressing this, and I don't know whether we can engage, you know, before April 12th, town council with everything else going on, but, you know, can we put this on hold long enough to at least get that commission back together, or at least make sure there's something that justifies a Rotary study?
Sure.
We can go to the library and pull out about 6 of them already, so, you know. Agreed?
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Right, I'll get a letter off to him, but this is this is more unbelievable information coming forward that he would append to grab the $100,000, which could be used for anything, to be used for studying our Rotary.
The other coordination item, again, I don't want to beat this too much at this meeting, but I just became aware this afternoon that our interim town administrator has met with the town planner, and that he is in the process of developing a article for town meeting to have the town meeting voters vote on adoption of the stretch energy code, which is my understanding was something that was proposed a number of years ago, was ultimately shot down at the town meeting.
It was.
Town planner did fill Mr. Neffinger on the past history. I think he still felt that it was something that was important, to something that he was committed to doing and still intends to do at this point.
So is he doing it as a resident of Springfield and putting in a resident's petition, or are the selectmen putting this in?
I believe he'd be putting it in through the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen had voted to close submission of town meeting articles, but the board does have the ability to reopen that to
So
themselves
this
at any point.
This is really the Board of Selectmen that's doing this?
It would be my expectation, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but it sounds like it's him meeting with people, so I think we got to understand, a resident could put something in with resident signatures, but
Right.
I haven't heard of a town administrator submitting a warrant article, have you? It's usually done by the Board of Selectmen, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be the Board of Selectmen that would be ultimately owning the article.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's just representing them, and
All right.
Correct. The other things, and it's a much longer discussion of whether or not the town would want to become a green community. I think there actually may be some benefits to it. There certainly are some financial benefits, but there are some commitments that the town would have to make that go way beyond the authority of the Board of Selectmen. There are commitments relative to setting a baseline energy usage and then achieving a 20% reduction in energy usage over the next 5 years. Great goal. You know, we'd love to see that happen, but I don't think it's a commitment and a plan that
Is it achievable for them?
that the Board of Selectmen has the authority to put together. The other thing that the town would have to commit to is adopting a policy in which any new vehicles purchased would be energy efficiency vehicles meeting state requirements for energy efficiency. Good, great goal, but particularly in our line of business and fire department's line of business, sometimes, for instance, you can't buy an energy efficient fire truck. You know, there are other things that so you really, it may all be a fine plan, but it can't be done autonomously. It requires input from all the impacted town departments and the residents ultimately.
Okay.
So that's the last item I had, other than probably while I'm talking, just looking to see if we can confirm the meeting for the 20th. I believe that worked for everybody the last time.
Yep.
But we would be doing that as the rate hearing, if that still works for everyone.
Going to April 20?
I'm good.
What time? 5 o'clock?
Yep.
yep, I got him there. Good.
Okay. With that, we'll move over to Bruce.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes,
All right,
please.
Just checking.
Sorry.
Okay.
All right.
Bruce,
You're running the meeting.
all right.
Limited on time here, I take it. Current, the energy efficiency projects we've been working on is the garage in the Mountain View School and Meadowbrook School. I did get some information back to move forward on the garage here at the service building. Total cost of the project's about $11,560. The incentive for the project's about $5,780. Annual energy savings is about $2,000 a year, and the payback for that project's about 2.89 years. So we're getting the paperwork moving forward and gonna move forward on that project. I am waiting to hear back from Northeast Efficiencies on the Mountain View and Meadowbrook project. I should have that paperwork in hand by the end of the week. I will then get that over to Gordon, the superintendent of schools, for the school committee's approval, if it makes sense to move forward with those. Any questions?
Awesome.
Okay?
That was quick.
Yeah, no, I got more.
Oh, all right. Any questions? I'm going, whoa.
Town hall renovations projects, the men's room was completed and is open for business as of today. The women's room will be completed by Friday as far as all the interior work, tile, partitions, everything else. Fixtures will be going in on Monday, so that will be open for business next week.
They look awesome.
Yeah, they
I was
came out
there
good.
today. They look
Yep.
just awesome.
This week also, we moved the assessor's
Bathroom's gonna look
office down into the meeting room. That move went well, so they're back down into the meeting room for the time being, so we can start step 2 of the phase 1 of the project. We did complete that wall in the support staff office in the selectman's office. So now that the assessors is moved out, we can move forward, starting demoing and removing some walls in the assessor's area and the accountant area. We're not going to affect the accountant area yet, just Sarah's office. She's actually out on maternity leave, so it's going to kind of work out well as far as getting some of that, her office actually completed. So when she gets back, her office should be ready and open for business.
No kid, no
Perfect.
office.
Huh?
Yeah, so it's moving well. We're gonna have a scheduled abatement over there roughly the week of the 12th of April. I went with a buy today to get the 8x8 tiles out of there. So that project, once we get the demo done, we'll get the abatement taken care of and start the construction. So this phase of the project should go pretty quickly, basically because the work involved isn't that extensive. COA generator, we've started the enclosure for the COA generator. We've got the rough framing up and it is roofed. We've kind of been hopping back and forth between the town hall and work orders and doing that project. Hopefully get my electrician to get the wire ordered this week so we can get that project buttoned up and wired in and ready to fire up for.
Is it just gonna be fenced in? Is that what the structure
Well,
about?
yeah, we just have a roof, and then I'm gonna actually put some, speaking with the COA directors, some decorative fencing to wrap around the generator, so it dresses it up a little bit, maybe plant some bushes or something around it, so it hides some of the, I guess, ugliness of the unit being there, but it'll look nice when it's done.
Awesome.
Maple Shade swing sets, the excavation for the new swing sets is complete. Hopefully those swing sets are scheduled for delivery this week. I haven't received a call yet for those, for that equipment. But once that gets in, we'll get that assembled at Maple Shade and holes drilled and assembled so the kids can start using that. Another item, the high school baseball fields. We did complete the varsity field. As of today, we reconstructed the pitcher's mound and the home plate area. The varsity team is actually practicing this week on it, so they're utilizing that as of today. We are waiting, we're short a little bit of material after further investigation on some of the criteria and recommendations through Turfus. We actually need more material, so Colin, the rec director, has ordered more material, will be delivered next Tuesday so we can complete the JV field also over there. And that's all I have.
I guess I'll just note in that project, that's another example of multiple towns, departments working together. The Recreation Commission has helped to coordinate some of the activities. The school department has helped to fund the material purchase, and, you know, we're, as we always do, working together to get it done.
Yep.
It's good.
As we should be able to, right? Roy, how we doing?
Doing very well,
Good?
very well.
You're a little grayer.
Not too bad. We're happy to say that the asphalt plants have opened on Tuesday.
Wow.
So Steve is actively doing patching, potholes, plow damage and so forth. We're also, continuing to clean the catch basins. When we do that, there's been a improvement in our collector, so the men in the field can actually put all the inspections of what they're finding right in the collector. Instead of, we still write it down, but having to put it in the field in there. It's been a great asset.
Excellent.
We're still repairing the catch basins, you know, all the emergency ones. And also, since the loom is finally starting to dry out, we're doing the lumen seeding now, plow damage. As far as the trees, we've done a lot of tree work. Now we're down to the ones that we possibly have to go to a tree expert. We still have some are coming in. We're keeping an eye on those. So that kind of sums up our normal work. In the future, we're going to get the sweeper going soon, so we'll start doing all the town streets. The brush grinder, I think, is almost fixed.
Waiting for, yeah.
As soon as that is, we're going to grind the brush, get that down to a manageable level. Irrigation systems, we put the new one in over at the high school, so tomorrow we're going to get that fired up. Hopefully no leaks before we start doing some top dressing on that field. A transfer station, once that dries out, we'll be doing some upgrades there. That's all I have.
Probably worth
Sounds good.
mentioning, Bruce, that unfortunately we're starting to see the effect of age on our fleet. We've,
Yes.
for example, one of our L8000s, the turbo needs to be replaced at this
Yes,
point.
we got a
and-
cracked turbo, and actually, after further inspection, the other two L8000s are in pretty bad shape also. We're actually gonna park truck 9 in the back. It's about $2,600 for a turbo. So we're just seeing the age of some of our equipment, and it's actually due to deterioration and rot. So we're keeping an eye on things. We have actually truck 11, or 13, Steve Savini's truck. We just did a rear end in that after further investigation, that 3 of the cylinders aren't even working in that truck. So we're getting the estimates on motor replacements. So kind of rustling around trucks. We have Steve actually in 42 now. So we're doing our best to keep things going. Our preventive maintenance plan is going well. It's just the age of our fleet and the salt and deterioration of some of the fleet over the past 10 years. It's showing. So moving forward, we're washing trucks after every storm, cleaning out sanders. We're not leaving salt in the trucks anymore. So we're doing our best to keep the fleet afloat. And I think we're doing the right thing now. But like I said, I think it's just showing the lack of maintenance and things in the past that we didn't do, but or didn't have time to do. But moving forward, we're going to do our best to take care of most of the costs that we can in-house, and like you said, hopefully this year we get a couple new trucks and we can start rotating our fleet a little bit more, and maybe a dump truck also. So I'll keep you guys posted.
Those 8,000s, what year are those?
Those
Like
95s or something?
99s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't bring the sheet out with me. But yeah, I mean, we're running them. They're not as efficient. Obviously, use power when the turbo isn't functioning properly.
Right.
But
Well,
during our
once that-
inspections and PMs, we're seeing all these things more often. So
This time of year, fortunately, we hope we're behind the snow. I shouldn't say it, but we hope that the snow's behind us. We have the ability to put some of these vehicles in the back for the time being, and hopefully wait till the beginning of the next fiscal year to fund some of the more significant. We definitely need them. It's just a question of there are some times that until we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, we don't want to bite off some of the larger bills until we're certain that we can make it.
They're gonna get to the point where they're just gonna nickel and dime us to death,
and I think we got a handle on what we're spending now and everything else. So it's just finding that happy.
well, yeah, I mean, if we keep them too long.
Yes. Well, that's
If we
it.
keep them too long.
Yes. Yeah. So I think we got a good plan. It's just we got to stick to it, and we're just
Nope.
it's all coming to a head, and we're just Gotta keep
And we were
moving
forced to
forward
keep
and-
those ones too long.
Yeah, yeah. And it's kind of funny as far as trucks, well, it's not funny, but truck 13, it's had 3 motor replacements. It's been a lemon since we got it. We're actually, like I said, it's down at Enfield Ford now. And there's no records on the last motor replacement. I don't know when that was done, years back, but I think Sarah Ford, we're gonna be reaching out to them tomorrow to see if there's any kind of records where we're at as far as mileage, and hopefully soften the blow a little bit, or try to get creative. So unfortunately, we don't, some of the records, we haven't retained or know where they are.
Is it worth putting an engine in?
Well, that's the next thing, so I don't know.
Is 13 Steve's trunk?
Yes, Steve Savini's.
Part of
So
the-
that's, yeah, that's what we're doing.
Part of the problem we saw is that when emissions equipment was changing,
Yeah.
That's the first-
diesel vehicles became much less reliable for several years, and the equipment, some of the bugs in there worked out, but we were in the middle of that
Especially
transition.
Ford.
Yes, they had a lot of
Especially Ford.
issues. Yeah. So, not good news, but like I said, we're keeping moving forward.
So the next meeting is the 20th.
20th.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.